Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Today's May 22nd, Friday, 2015. I'm going to start my little timer so I don't go very long. This is just like an update video. I thought I'd talk about a few concerts, show a few things, stuff I posted in the blog. So this isn't really new. I've had this for a while, and this was downloaded. The Deer Hunter did release a live album, though, for those who didn't know about that. I mean, most the Deer Hunter fans knew about that. It's from the tour they did a couple years ago with the string section. As a track list, you can see it's got a lot of the stuff from Migrant and the Color Spectrum. But it's a pretty good live record. It's the first official live album. They put up the live DVD of the Color Spectrum a few years ago. But anyway, and Act 4 is upon us, probably coming out in August. I think I may have posted something in the blog or not. Some of the fans, I guess, talked to Casey Crescenzo on their recent tours they did this month in May, playing the Act shows, and I think he mentioned that they're looking to release Act 4 in mid to late August, I think. So that stuff should be coming out relatively soon, I would think, once this tour's done, which it might actually already be done, or it's got another week or so left. But anyway, I've wrote a bunch of things in the blog, and like I said, I was going to talk about some concerts, but maybe as I got in my hand right now, I did talk about both my YouTube channel subscriptions and podcasts, which I've been finding more and more. It's a long story short. Podcasts, I've always wanted to find podcasts to listen to, especially at work, about interesting discussions, namely music discussion. I used to listen to a film discussion one too, but it's been few and far between, and then recently I just started looking again and found a few. One in particular has been like my addiction I've talked about. It's called The Color of Air from Greg Massey, the guitar player who used to play with Maudlin of the Well and K.O. Dot out of Boston, and now he's got his own band called Baliset. And but his podcast itself is him talking to other musicians. It's kind of maybe more of what I would like to do. My friend of mine, that drummer guy, Josh Runquist, did something similar, but we didn't talk to musicians. Just a lot of music discussion, talking about favorite albums, favorite bands, favorite concerts, that kind of stuff. And it's from a musician's perspective, so also about how recording, the life of a musician. But so I've actually, in the process of listening to that podcast, which a lot of the episodes are like an hour and a half, 2 hours long, but when you're killing time at work anyways, that's not a problem to be that long. I had never actually listened to his band Baliset, even though I remember seeing some stuff about them a few years ago. I think right around the time the last Maudlin of the Well album came out, Part the Second. And so I did check it out and was really liking it, and I picked up their first album. It's called A Time for Rust. Stylistically, if you don't know Maudlin of the Well or K.O. Dot, he doesn't like the word avant-garde. It's sort of a blending of styles, though, I would say, with Maudlin of the Well and K.O. Dot. Very much metal, progressive metal, and like chamber instruments and stuff like that. A lot of, I don't know, non-traditional rock instruments, but and uses of using vocal effects and stuff like that. But Baliset isn't exactly like Maudlin of the Well or K.O. Dot. And K.O. Dot isn't really metal, but Baliset I would say is a form of metal, but they are doing sort of a blending acoustic elements and a female vocalist with Greg's male vocals. A little bit like Opeth in that sense, but not as maybe as extreme. They use some samples on some songs. I don't know. Anyway, this is their first album, Time for Rust. It came out in 2009. They put out an EP back in like 2013 also, which is like supposed to be for a concept album they're going to be working on. He's been working on and going to release sometime in the next few years when it's done. But he's said that the new record is a lot better than this record, which I actually really like a lot of this record. My favorite track probably would be the last track, the epic of sorts, multi-part song, the Echo Box, which is like, I want to say it's about 15 minutes, but the last like 6-7 minutes is like this acoustic sort of phrase that kind of crescendos, and it reminds me of some classic rock tune that eventually I'll figure it out what it is, but I can't remember. Anyway, And he was kind enough to send me a shirt and everything from Baliset. So unfortunately, they don't really tour a lot at this point. They just play live in Boston, the Boston area, or New England, which he talks about frequently on The Color of Air. But they're a band that I definitely would be interested in seeing live. I don't know if I'm gonna end up in that area at some point, but I would say especially if you're into the prog scene, prog metal, and you like just hearing accounts of bands or people's taste about that kind of music, or you're a musician yourself, check out The Color of Air. I would also add to that just like 2 weeks ago, another kind of podcast started, although The Color of Air is downloadable, but another podcast of sorts that's kind of similar with two musicians talking about life being a musician. It's called The Music Life, with Joey, the singer from the Reign of Kindo, and the drummer from the band Jolly, blanking on his name at this moment, Lou something, I think, or Luke. Anyway, that podcast is in its infancy. So The Color of Air has been going on for almost a year, but that podcast, they're just kind of, I think, finding their footing and figuring out what they're going to do exactly with it. But the conversations have been about music, but also about a lot of other stuff, which is fine. But it hasn't really dove as much into sort of the kind of stuff that The Color of Air is doing with, what are my top 5 concept albums, or what's the best experience, or just some of the interviews. But they're having interviews on The Music Life, so I love the Reign of Kindo. Even they're talking about the Reign of Kindo music, I'd love to hear it. So Music Life is another podcast I've discovered. Among some others I posted, like the Genesis one, Roundtable Genesis, and the Yes Music podcast, which has been going on for like 4 years now. So if you like podcasts and you're a music fan, and you're into progressive rock specifically, I mean, I like listen to Sound Opinions, and now I've been listening to All Songs Considered, which now is downloadable. When I posted the blog entry a few weeks ago, I wasn't able to find it. For many years, I knew about that podcast, and unless I was using iTunes, I wasn't able to download it, but it's now downloadable directly from their site. So I'm kind of addicted to both All Songs Considered and Sound Opinions now, but Sound Opinions, I go back to 2005, 2006, when locally in Minnesota, the 89.3, The Current, started airing it on Sunday nights, and then I realized I could just, download the podcast, and then I actually went to an appearance where I met Jim DeRogatis and Greg Kot. Actually mentioned Apes and Androids to them, if they remember that, but anyway. So that's kind of what my deal with the podcasts are, but I wanted to just talk about, I saw Rush at the XL Energy Center last week, what was the date? I should know on the top of my head. I want to say May 12th. It was a Tuesday night. It was a week ago Tuesday. Maybe the last time I'll ever see Rush. Like the 7th or 8th time I've seen them. Every show, I've not missed a show since I really got into them. And the first show was 1994, so I've had like sort of a loyalty streak going on with Rush. But if you haven't seen, this is maybe a little bit of spoilers as far as set list, but if you haven't seen the tour, or you're thinking about seeing the tour, or if you did see the tour, certainly chime in and give me your take. I really enjoyed the set list. The biggest highlight probably being Jacob's Ladder. I just couldn't help but think, why haven't they done Jacob's Ladder before this? It's not that technical, or to perform the song wouldn't have required that much of Rush to do it. And it's always been a fan favorite. Maybe the Rush guys have never been all that nostalgic for it, and that's why they never played it. But it was long overdue, I think. And they played Natural Science too from Permanent Waves, which I'll test. Natural Science is probably my favorite Rush song from the 80s, or at least from that album. But they played it in the last 10, 15 years. Going back to the early 2000s, they played it 2 or 3 times. It's even on Rush in Rio, I recall. But I absolutely love that track. That's like the perfect progressive rock song. But we weren't expecting, I wasn't expecting they'd actually be playing Natural Science. I thought really they were going to be playing The Camera Eye instead, but we got Natural Science. And given the state of Neil's health, and I guess I was just reading Alex Lifeson has got arthritis, but Neil it was reported like a week before the tour started that he had tendinitis. This, in all likelihood, is the last tour, if not the last show. So it was definitely a can't miss for me, given that I'm a long-time Rush fan anyways. It felt weird just to thinking that the whole time, like, this is the last Rush show I'll ever see. But I can't be disappointed in it. But as far as Rush tours go, the sound at the XL Energy Center, as I wrote my review, was not as I remembered it. I've seen Rush there a couple times and many other concerts. Comparably, in Minnesota, the large arena venues, Target Center. I mean, I have never seen a show at Target Field and like the new Gopher football stadium and the new Viking stadium, which is being built. But XL is kind of the best venue for large venues in my mind, and it really wasn't. It was a lot of the reverb sounded like it was cranked up. Even just listening to the house music, they played Hendrix's Spanish Castle Magic, and I've never heard Spanish Castle Magic sound like that. So I was some of it was being drowned out, the vocals specifically. I could mainly hear the drums and the bass at points. But I think it was early on that it was like that, and they may have, after the first set, for the second set, they may have done some adjustments, and it got a little bit better. But like the last show at the Target Center when I saw Rush, they had the string section. I could barely, if at all, hear the string section, and that was Target Center, and I'm not surprised by that. But for whatever reason, at the X that last week, it seemed to come across kind of similar. So, but again, I've seen Rush many times before, and if this is the last time I got to see them, I can't be too upset about that. As far as set list goes, they also did Distant Early Warning from Grace Under Pressure, which is a song I've always enjoyed, and they haven't played. Maybe the only time I've ever seen it. Maybe one other time among the 7 or 8 shows I've seen them previously. They frequently would play Red Sector A, but they wouldn't play that, so I was happy to see that. Animate from Counterparts, although I think they've played that. The way this tour goes, it's called the R40 tour, they're going backwards chronologically, so they covered almost every album. There's a few albums in the 80s I don't think they played anything from, but they did a little more of the new recent stuff, which the stuff of Clockwork Angels, the title track, and I'm forgetting the other, the Antichrist, something like that. Not my first choice, but they have been doing the Wreckers. We didn't get the Wreckers in St. Paul, but Wreckers would have been certainly one I would have preferred. But so they naturally did some more recent music. They did some stuff off Vapor Trails. They did at least a couple songs off of Snakes and Arrows, which is maybe my least favorite Rush album. But they did do Far Cry and The Main Monkey Business. It happened to be 2 songs I like from that record. But if I rated Rush, I need to do like a video or a blog entry about my Rush album. They just did the Yes one. Snakes and Arrows would not be doing too well on that list. But as a whole, they even did part of Hemispheres, which was a little bit of a tease. I would have loved to have seen them either play the whole thing, even if Geddy can't hit those high notes, or at least end that part with the climax of Hemispheres, where Geddy sings, "We will call you Cygnus, the god of balance you shall be." Settle, and then they went into part of Cygnus X1 from Farewell to Kings. So, but again, they played part of 2112. They even played Lakeside Park, which is a track they haven't played that recently. Although there have been criticisms about the way it sounded, so I didn't notice it that much. But they were just trying to fit a lot of stuff in. That was kind of my beef to a point. Rush has so much music, and this is their last tour, potentially the R40 tour. The videos were good, but as far as like just snippets and medleys and stuff, that's kind of been their MO with their older music for a long time. But as John Petrucci from Dream Theater used to give them a little bit of trouble on at least one of the Dream Theater DVDs. Why does Rush have to play schmedleys? Which Dream Theater does their share of medleys as well. But I would rather actually see just the whole track, even if it's long. Take out a few songs and just give me that whole song. Hemispheres being my favorite Rush album. The actual title track, that again was a tease, but I've never seen any of it live, so that solves that. All right, well, I'm gonna finish this up in just a couple of minutes, but I did see an XTC tribute, this 3rd annual in in Minneapolis at the Ice House Wednesday night, and XTC is a band that I've meant to really get not get obsessed with, but get more and more into. I've always liked Skylarking, and then the last couple of years, Oranges and Lemons. Those 2 records specifically, but they have a pretty deep catalog, and after going to now the 2nd tribute, it just irks me that I need to spend more time listening to a lot of their other records. I think they might be a band a little bit like The Police or a few other bands where I may not ultimately, like Frank Zappa, I may not ultimately enjoy all their songs, and so if I'm going to try to invest time and really get familiar with a lot of their catalog and their deeper tracks, there's going to be songs I'm just never going to care for, so I may end up skipping. But there are gems in there, and gems that I've noticed that the more you hear them, the more, a few times they grow on you more. So they're not, partly because Andy Partridge's vocal style is a little odd and quirky. I was coming from Jellyfish, as I love the band Jellyfish, and Jellyfish were largely influenced by XTC. But Andy Sturmer, the singer from Jellyfish's voice is sort of immediately enjoyable, whereas Andy Partridge he's got a good voice, but it definitely, and the vocal lines he's writing are definitely odd, but they definitely can grow on you. Now, a song like maybe my favorite XTC song at this point, King for a Day, that track, I'd say he has a very clean vocal, and it's not a song that I would require many times to hear. It just immediately got me. But unfortunately with XTC, I think a lot of their songs aren't that immediately digested. But after going to the tribute second year in a row, it was a benefit actually for women with cancer. They just, they have their moments here and there. Like the English Settlement, they covered a number of tracks from, and I'd never actually heard the English Settlement. Although that's the album I think that has Senses Overtime, that Marillion actually did cover at one of the Marillion weekends with Dave Gregory from XTC. But there's a Big Express I ended up getting on Record Store Day, although a lot of people say that's one of their weaker records. That's the album that preceded Skylarking. Skylarking's considered sort of their trademark or most successful record. Todd Rundgren produced it. It's got Dear God and the Supergirl track, which I think they need to put on the new Supergirl TV show, but who knows if XTC will allow them to use the rights, or the management or whoever owns the rights to that song, that album. But there's a couple others, The Black Sea, Drums and Wires, Mummer. I have a couple of them on vinyl, and I just almost am assuming that I just need to give them enough time that I'll become at least a bit more knowledgeable and that much bigger of a fan, and I think I'll probably continue to attend those tribute shows as long as it works out with my schedule. But they may be just a band for me that are very much of there's a lot of individual songs that are just amazing, but other than maybe Skylarking and Oranges and Lemons, none of their albums I'll ever view as classics beginning to end. Although some people swear by the English Settlement. Their Non-Such is another one that came out after Oranges and Lemons, which I have on cassette and have been listening to and I enjoy, but it's kind of hit and miss at this point. And then Apple Venus is another one that came out in the late 90s. And then they have some earlier records. I mean, they have a vast... It's like trying to get into Marillion or Rush or even Zeppelin. If you were brand new to them, where do you start? And I mean, besides Skylarking. So this was 6, 7, 8 years ago that I first started checking them out, and I just never have given them enough time, and I probably will at some point. So anyway, I got a couple more concerts coming up, including Josh Rouse and Steven Wilson and the Family Crest in July, right around the time that the Minion movie is coming out. But I'm going to wrap this up for now. Thanks for watching. Hopefully more videos are coming soon.